Hello, and welcome to Answer Everywhere. This is a live show where each episode we take a look at a source code repository that I'm not familiar with and dig around and see what we can find, sort of explore, do some code archaeology, that sort of thing. I had left this episode as a to be determined, and what I've decided is to take a look at the source code for Wallabag. So Wallabag is a read it later sort of app. There, you may have you may be familiar with similar apps like Pocket, which I think is built into Firefox, or it is at least owned by Firefox at this point. Instapaper was another one. I'm sure there are a few others that I don't recall. But the idea is that it's essentially browser-based bookmarking, but with a few extra features to make it more convenient. So, for example, all of these apps will typically let you bookmark something with a keyboard shortcut, typically with a browser plugin. Kind of upload that article to the cloud to be stored in some sort of database, and then it can be served to you on your mobile device or whatever. Um, the the reason I wanted to look at Wallabag was because in the course of doing this show, I had bookmarked a bunch of stuff. Let's see if we can see any of these. Just scrolling through, just various things that either articles or papers I came across. And these were, my goal is to read these at some point. And the issue is that, I'm doing this on a VM, so it's kind of isolated from the rest of my environment. It's not easy to sit down and make time to kind of go through a big list of articles. But what would be really nice for me, since I do a lot of things that are away from the computer, like gardening or driving or exercise or whatever, it would be nice to have a way of having a machine read me these articles, kind of like playing through like a podcast or like a podcast app would. And so Wallabag seems to provide this feature, at least in their Android mobile app. So I wanted to take a look at what they were doing, and then if it seems cool, I'll hook it up and start incorporating that into my workflow. So one complication is that it's in PHP, and I have written one PHP app way back in the day. It may have been the first thing I ever built. It was like a psychology tool that I was doing research at the time on essentially psychology inventory design, and so it was a tool that did a kind of like adaptive inventory. But I haven't thought about PHP in years. I think it should be probably pretty readable, but if they're using some sort of advanced PHP framework, I won't be so familiar with it. And then I also want to look at I have the iOS app here, but what I really wanted to look at was the Android app, because I use Android currently. And I think this is the one that has a nicer reading out loud experience. So we'll take a look at it. I'm not sure how I'm going to do both of these at once. I don't think I've done here before two repositories. So obviously, since we're covering more ground, and I'm not planning to extend the time much longer, we're going to have to cover less ground in each one if we're going to do two. And I think that's okay. It might be simple enough that the PHP app, there's not a lot to it, but who knows? And I guess before we jump in, we can talk about like what we expect it to do. Well, the basic thing is it should have some way of saving an article to a database, along with some metadata, like which user the article belongs to. I believe that Wallabag allows you to have installations with multiple users, so there should be some sort of accounts mechanism. There should be some API so that the Android app can make requests to the API, probably REST requests, and get back data. The Android app probably has some sort of synchronization mechanism because I believe you can use it offline. Which, if one of the things you would like to do with an app like this is read it on, say, like the subway during your commute. And so it wouldn't be a great experience if it's only online. I looked at it a bit, and it seems like it has an offline experience. And it's going to do a couple of other things. Presumably, it has some way of fetching the content, unless your browser is doing the fetching and then sending the fetched content. But I expect that it's going to have some sort of fetcher, and the fetcher might have to do some sorts of other processing. You might have to deal with JavaScript. If you look at how how a browser like Firefox works, let's see if Wallabag has a Wikipedia article. Let's just pull up around. How about Wallaby? So and then browsers have this reader view, which does something. What does it do? Well, I'm not quite sure, but it essentially eliminates a lot of the HTML elements that are not conducive to reading, and makes the page just more about a piece of text that's easier on the eyes in some sense. And you could imagine a world where these read it later apps weren't really needed because the browser could add that functionality. I don't know why browsers do that. It seems like in both in Firefox and in Chromium, the browser bookmarking experience hasn't seen a lot of love, I think, in years. I don't know if people just don't use browser bookmarks or what, but it seems like basic features that are lacking in those services, and so these kind of alternatives spring up. Let me grab Wallabag, and let me take the Android app and pop it out here, and I'll deal with this later. And let's look at the main repo. So again, I don't know PHP, but we have source and source and app, both of which could plausibly be important entry points. Let me move. I have source graph open here. I'm going to move that over, and I'll use some combination of them. But I'll open source and app. DataDB seems like it might be important. Scripts, I'm not sure. var and web, it's hard to say, but let's open them. And then most of the stuff in the main directory seems like essentially metadata. Okay, here's Wallabag source, and we have a Wallabag folder. I see something about RabbitMQ in this commit message. So I guess they must be using RabbitMQ as a message broker. Import, maybe as part of importing. But we have annotations API, core, import, and user, and some sense of bundle. I don't know if bundle is a PHP thing or a particular framework. But I'll open these in the order that I think are most important. Probably core, then API, then user, and then annotation. And I'm just going to skip import. And here's the app directory. And we have things like doctrine migrations. I don't know what doctrine is, maybe some database thing, because I associate migrations with database. And then themes and config. I guess I can probably skip these. Here's DB, and we just get a get ignore. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And then in scripts, we have dev, probably something related to development, install, release, require, and update. And they're all shell scripts, .sh. The release script, I'm just curious what the release script does. You git clone some stuff, CDs, and then, it's CDs and then does some actions, including something with Symfony. I think Symfony is a PHP program framework. Let's look that up. Framework written in PHP. It's also distributed computing software. Symfony with an F. Is this it? A free and open source PHP web application framework instead of reusable PHP component libraries. Okay, it was inspired by Spring, which is like a Java framework. All right, cool. All right, here's Wallabag Web. We've got things like images, bundles, img, JavaScript, import, and wall assets, which I'm going to guess is just assets, like things like images and fonts. But we'll look at whatever we just opened. What was it? JS. JS might be important. And then var, we have cache, logs, and sessions, which we'll ignore. Here's core bundle. We get things like twig. I don't know what twig is. Maybe some PHP thing. Tools, resources, repository, param converter, operator, form, guzzle site authenticator, helper, event, entity, doctrine. I'm going to guess doctrine is documentation, dependency injection, data fixtures, controller, and command. I guess I want operator, controller, and command. Maybe tools and twig and repository and possibly helper. I don't know if I opened these, but entity and event seem important. All right, that should be good. Then in API bundle, we have controller, dependency injection, entity. The same stuff, except I guess the API view of it. Now it's possible that there's interesting stuff in the API view. So let's just poke at one and see what we see. Get entries exist action. It looks like it's going to do real work in the API thing. It's not just like handing off the handlers. It looks like these might be the actual handlers. So API might be important. Where my controller? Search, tag, tagging, user, Wallabag. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's leave API bundle open and kind of dig in. We have the user bundle, which has things like controller, data fixtures, dependency injection, entity. Did I open entity? I think I opened an entity in some other directory. So I guess each directory gets its own kind of entity, which is like the model, I guess, of users. Form, mailer, repository, resources, data. I guess I want controller. Here's the annotation bundle. I guess I'll just open controller for annotation. And then JS just has this one file. It's got stuff about imports, developer stuff, mapping. This looks like a big hash map. It's a router. And so the tokens will go to, I'm not sure how to read this route table, but I think it's non-essential to understanding how Wallabag works. So here's the core operator, and we get doctrine in PHP. Let's just verify what doctrine is. Matches.php. Provides a matches operator used for tagging rules. Let's try PHP doctrine. Oh wait, was doctrine the thing with migrations? Okay, doctrine is database and object mapping. So basically ORM. Okay, so maybe doctrine is somewhat important to look at if this is basically just a database driven app. But inside, the other thing other than doctrine we have is PHP. And we just get matches, no matches, and pattern matches. What's going on here? Provides a matches operator for tagging rules. It asserts that a given pattern is contained in a subject in a case insensitive way. This operator will be used to compile tagging rules in PHP, usable directly on entry objects, for instance. It is registered in ruler Z using a service. I really have no idea what's going on. Something about matching and tagging. And that's really all that's in the operator core bundle. What else do we have? I think I opened up other core bundle stuff. Yeah, okay. In controller, we have config controller, entry controller, exception controller, feed controller, site credentials controller. This is kind of a weird. It's a. I'm not so familiar with this pattern. It looks like there's a bunch of directories, and maybe the directory title, the name of the directory tells you something about what's in here. But then each individual file kind of has the same name as every other directory. So it's a little bit disorienting um, in terms of the files. The file names don't give you a lot of information about what's going to be there, I think. But let's look at entry controller. I guess use is probably similar to import for PHP. And this is kind of funny syntax. They have this, I guess, backslash. All right. So entry controller is going to extend abstract controller. We've got an entity manager and a dispatcher interface. And then construct is probably some sort of constructor. It's going to set, it's just going to set variables to what was passed in. And mass action is going to take a request and a tag repository. And what's it going to do? It's going to set values to basically everything that was in the request. And then have two presumably lists, tags to add and tags to remove. And the action is going to be set to the string toggle read. This is not passed in, right? This is just, we're starting with toggle read somehow. Then we check if toggle star is set on values, where values was passed in from the request up here. And, okay, so toggle read is the default, but it could also be toggle star or delete or tag based on what's in values. And then if we are in the tags case, we'll do some tag stuff. And then, or if we're in the entry checkbox case, we'll do some entry checkbox stuff. Are those the only two cases we're really handling? And also, is set values tags. So somehow, values is essentially a hash map, I guess. And in addition to possibly having the value tag singular set, it could also set tags. And then what happens if neither of these is set, entry checkbox or tags? At any rate, we're in the tags case, we're going to do whatever an array filter is, I guess, filter some stuff out of the array and explode with comma. Maybe the tags are a comma separated string, and then we're expanding them into an array. And this kind of looks like a lambda function. It's going to take a v and call trim on it and return whether the trimmed v is the empty string. So I guess this is the thing passed into the filter. So we're just ignoring essentially tags that consist of non-tag characters, whatever trim decides to get rid of. Then we're going to iterate over labels. Where did we get labels? We got them from this array function. Basically the stuff that's in the tags. We're going to set remove to false. Look for dashes. If it starts with a negative sign, I guess, then we're going to, that means remove it. And then we're going to set tag to tag repository find one by label. And I guess this is getting maybe like a tag database object from the tag string. And if we're going to remove, we're going to add tag to tags to remove. Otherwise, we're going to check if tag is null, set tag to a new tag, set its label to label, and then set tags to add to tag. And then we're going to look at entry checkboxes. And I guess this is like you check some stuff and you just do some sort of bulk operation. And some of the operations can be toggle read. I guess like whether you've read the thing, toggle star, which I suppose is whether you like the thing, like the document you read. Um, Otherwise, if it's not toggle read or toggle read or toggle star, we're going to check if tag is equal to action. Um, in which case, for each so we're going to iterate over tags to add and add all the tags, and then tags to remove. Otherwise, we're in the delete case, and we're going to call the event dispatcher to dispatch a new event deleted event with a name. And then we're going to call this entity manager remove entry. Okay, we're passing entry into the deleted event. Okay, so event dispatcher probably essentially puts a delete on a queue for the database. So it calls it to be deleted from the database, and then entity manager might remove it from the like a software repository of the data. I'm not sure. And then we're going to flush the entity manager, and then we might redirect. We're going to get the redirect helper to the referrer. I guess and redirect to the referrer. Okay. Search form action. You can add an entry form action. Add entry, what is this? Via bookmarklet action. Is entry like an article? Where are we? Core bundle controller. We also have a translator interface. I don't know what the translator is doing. But let's look at add entry form action. I'm guessing this is add an entry with a form. It's going to get a new entry, passing in the user. And it's going to create a create form. And then we're going to call handle request on the request. And we'll call essentially form as submitted, I suppose. And then as a side, and it's going to return probably some Boolean indicating whether the submission was a success. And we're also going to check whether it's valid. And if those are both true, then we're going to set, we're going to check if the entry already exists. And if it doesn't, we're going to add flash, maybe like flash a message. And the message says it's already saved. Oh, false is not equal. I misread this. So I don't know why this just doesn't say if existing entry, but if false is not equal to existing entry. Okay. This makes much more sense to have this error message if the entry does exist. And then we'll redirect if the entry exists. Otherwise, we're going to call update entry on entry and then persist it from the entity manager and then call flush with the entity manager, which I guess might flush the queue or calls it to process the queue. And then entry save dispatch event about it. And we'll call the dispatcher and say that an entity was saved. And then we'll do this redirect again. And then we'll return somehow. I guess if we don't return here, the thing we're returning to is a new version of the form. Okay, so this tells me a couple of things. One is this event dispatcher doesn't seem like this is actually doing the database stuff. It seems like persist must be doing the database. So first we're going to persist. An entity manager seems like the thing that persists. And then event dispatcher seems like it's just sending essentially pub sub messages to sending signals to listeners that are going to respond in the case that an entry was saved. But when we delete, we did it the opposite way. First, we dispatch the message that an entity was deleted, and then it seems like we remove it. Is that the right way to handle things? It seems a little bit racy. It seems like you want to do this in a transaction, possibly. So if you remove it before you tell people you removed it, then I guess the worry is that a client might try to interact with something that's no longer in the database. But the racy condition is that perhaps we tell everyone that it's been removed, but we never actually remove it. I guess that's not so bad. It seems like you might want to do those. You might want to be. I'm not sure. I don't know what I don't have a good sense of intuition about the right way to do that. I guess this if you have to do one or the other, and they're going to race, it seems like you should do it in the order they've been doing it. Right. And then you can do things like show all entities, show all entries, etc. So it seems like a lot of the action is really in the entity manager. Did I open that? Here's command, tools. So where's entities? Here, entity. Cool. All right, we'll look up the entity manager in a few minutes, but let's I want to quickly go through some of these other directories. So here's command, and we have things like export command, generate URL hashes, install command, list user command, reload entry, and show user command, tag all command. I guess I don't. These are not so I think fundamental. And then tools just has utils, and there's not a lot to them. We can generate tokens and get reading time. Wait, what does get reading time do? It's going to go floor on something that we're going to count for an article based on 200 words per minute. So we're just going to count the words, whatever Han, Hiragana, Katakana, Hangul. I don't know. I don't know what that stuff is. And then we're just going to divide the number of text tokens by 200. Let's look up one of these. Japanese syllabary, part of the Japanese writing system. So this is, I guess, looking for like Japanese tokens, probably in addition to English tokens. Hangul. The Hangul alphabet is the simplest. Maybe Korean. The Korean alphabet. Okay. So it's looking for alphabets that are not maybe word boundaries in those alphabets are harder to recognize. Okay. Here's Wallabag extension. This is in Twig. I don't know what Twig is, but it seems like it's some extension. Got filters. Let's see if Twig is a PHP thing. Fast, flexible, and secure PHP template, something or other. So templates. Here's core bundle. So I'll ignore that. Here's core bundle repository. We have things like site credentials, tags, tagging roles, entry. Let's look at entry repository. And extend service entity repository. And this is the thing that retrieves unread entries for a user. And it says get builder for unread user. It's going to take a user ID. And it's going to return this sorted query builder by user, taking the user ID and where E is archived is equal to false. So I guess archived means you read it. And this seems like it's probably just doing a database thing. DQL. Can I find SQL in here? Well, there's one occurrence of SQL. What is DQL? Data query language. It's part of the base grouping of SQL sublanguages. I didn't realize it had sublanguages. Into 4 categories: a data query language, a a data definition, and a data control. All right. So it's part of SQL, I guess. Namely the query part. All right, here's helper. We have a crypto proxy. And we can download images, timestamps, and we can export entries, file cookie jar, an HTTP client, redirect, prepare pager for entries. What is a pager? Prepare. User. If user isn't logged in, we can force it, like for feed. Well, I'm not sure what sense it's using pager. Maybe like a like pagination in an API. I'm not sure. Here's core bundle entity, which I think is important. In fact, it's important. So I'm going to put it at the end and try to get through stuff that I suspect is less important. API bundle, I'm not sure. Here's going to be the, let's look at the entry deleted event. And we have both subscribers and listeners. What's the difference? Custom doctrine ORM subscriber, download images subscriber, SQLite cascade delete subscriber, and table prefix subscriber. Look at the cascade delete, and then let's look at also one listener. Like locale, how about user, locale listener? And then in user bundle entity, we just have user. So let's see what a user is. It extends base user and implements email two-factor interface and Google two-factor interface and backup code interface. I'm assuming Google is the like FIDO standard, right? FIDO Alliance, universal second factor. Initially developed by Google and Yubico. Okay, I didn't know that. With contribution from NXP Semiconductors, the standard is now hosted by the FIDO Alliance. What is NXP? Oh, Eindhoven, Netherlands. I think Eindhoven is the city with I've heard of this city. I think I've heard of it in the context of autism. Let's see if we can find anything about Eindhoven. It's been suggested the Eindhoven study, STEM regions and autism. It has been suggested that rates of autism might be higher in cities like Eindhoven because they are centers of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Previous family studies show that parents of autistic children are overrepresented in STEM occupations. Results. In brief, rates of autism were more than twice as high in Eindhoven compared to the other 2 Dutch cities. All right. I haven't looked at the methodology of that study, but it seems at least plausible. So there may be some Aspies working on these technologies in the NXP Semiconductors, spun off from Philips. Is Philips a Dutch company? The Dutch multinational conglomerate. Huh. Here's Gerard Philips. He looks very severe. I don't know anything about him. Okay. Well, all right. So NXP integrated circuits. I don't know if they make the YubiKey keys though. Like, what are they doing in this FIDO alliance? That's what I really want to know. See if YubiKey uses NXP stuff. Very mysterious. So NXP targets automotive, industrial, and IoT mobile communication. Okay, they're the co-inventor of near field communication, along with Sony and Inside Secure. And they supply NFC chipsets that enable mobile phones to be used for pay goods, okay, and to exchange data securely. So electronic passports, RFID tags. Yeah. Okay. So this would be like anything that kind of resembles using your phone or a device the same way that you would use like a smart card. And I guess it makes sense that they're involved in the FIDO Alliance. Okay. So here's entity timestamp straight. Oh, no, sorry, we're going to use entity timestamp. This is just user. And we've got lifecycle callbacks with ORM. The database table, I guess, is user. We have some repository class. And what do we have? We have an ID, the user ID. We have a name, a username. Name is different from username, I guess, and an email. When they were created, when they were updated. Entries. One to many. Are these all the articles for that user, maybe? And then we have config, site credentials, clients, a default client auth code, a Google Authenticator secret, which I guess would now be called the FIDO secret, backup codes, email, two-factor. Okay. And we have getters and setters, and that's basically it. What about password? What was that? We saw something about credentials, site credentials. One to many. Hopefully they are somehow hashed and not just put in the database. But here's, actually, maybe we could see. It might not be in this file, site credentials. We did see some crypto stuff. Maybe in the imports. Is there any crypto here? No. Okay, so crypto must be just somewhere else, I suspect. Controller has manage controller in user bundle. And I guess I want to see like what sorts of things this is doing. It's got new action, creates a new user entity, edit action. These are all essentially ways of interaction with a database. It looks like create, delete form. So we've got these forms that we can create. Okay, here's controller, Wallabag annotation controller. I guess I'm going to skip this. Oops. And here's entity. And we're going to keep postponing entity so that we can look at these events real quick. So this event is fired as soon as an entry is deleted. So the entry delete extends event, and it's got a name and an entry that's, I guess, the thing that's deleted. It's going to call constructor, I guess, to construct the event, and you can call get entry, and that's all that it is. All right, that's very simple. And here's the subscriber, which extends event subscriber. SQLite doesn't care about cascading remove, so we need to manually remove associated stuff for an entry. Foreign key support can be enabled by running pragma foreign keys equals on at runtime, but it needs a compilation flag that not all SQLite instances have. Okay, so this seems like it has some hooks. We've got a constructor. We can get the subscribed events, pre-remove. We removed everything related to the upcoming removed entry because SQLite can't handle it on its own. We do it in the pre-remove because we can't retrieve tags in the post-remove because the entry ID is gone. Okay, and pre-remove is the only function that it has. Here's locale listener. And it extends event subscriber interface. Isn't that what the other thing extended? No, it implements event subscriber. But this one implements, oh, wait, what? Event subscriber interface versus event subscriber. How are they different? I don't know. And this is linking to a sticky session thing. So this is for something about sticky sessions. Okay. And here's entity. We've got an entry, config, which will ignore internal settings, rule interface, site credentials, tag, and tagging rules. I think tags are just assigning metadata. And so I think most of the stuff is just going to be an entry. We've got some XML stuff, XML root entry, some ORM stuff. And this seems like mainly a database thing. We've got an ID, a UID. So ID is maybe database ID, and then UID is a unique identifier for the article, and a title, and a URL, the URL fetched by Wallabag. A hashed URL. Why not just use the hashed URL as the UID? I mean, that wouldn't be an actual UID, but why not use it as the identifier? I don't know. We've got an origin URL where the user retrieved or found the URL. For example, an other article, Twitter, or the given URL if none are provided. I don't know what that means. So we have also the given URL, define the URL entered by the user without redirections. So I guess you give it a URL and it might redirect. And so the thing that's called URL is the thing that actually was serving the site, not what the user passed in. Then we're also going to hash the given URL. We have a thing to know whether it's archived and when it was archived, whether it's starred, and the content, which is a string. I'm guessing the content is like the body of the article. When it was created, when it was updated, when it was published, who published it, when it was starred, annotations, MIME type, language, reading time, domain name. Seems like you get the domain name from the URL though. The preview picture, I guess it's just for UI display. HTTP status. I wonder, so is it storing things that are not status like 200? Like if it gets an error, does it store that as an entry? Seems like this should always be 200. I'm not sure. And then we have, we're going to also store headers. Okay. And user and tags. Cool. So seems like API bundle might be where the action is. So let's jump over to source graph. So it'll give me, let's see if we can find the word fetch. Okay. So in import bundle, abstract import, we've got fetch content. And in helper content proxy, we got something about fetched content. Import content proxy test, import test. Controller entry, controller test. Tests are good. Maybe let's look at entry controller test. And see where fetched appears. Test reload with fetching failed. We're going to log in. So this test is going to log in as an admin, get the test client, get the logged in user. Okay, so create a new entry with the logged in user. We'll set a bogus URL at 0.0.0. 0.0.0.0. I think I missed one there. We're going to try to persist the entry and flush. And then we're going to have this reload request. And assert that we get a 302. Okay. And then we're going to force the entity manager to clear some stuff. So the set URL, I'm going to guess, doesn't actually do anything other than set the URL. So maybe persist is the thing that fetches. No definition found. Here's more tests. Can I ignore tests? Can I find a definition here? Persist. No definition found. Bummer. I feel like this is just going to be an interface. Tag controller, tag controller. All right, what do we have in abstract import? So we have this function to fetch content from the content proxy using Gravy or Gravy. Gravy. If it fails, return the given entry to be saved in all case. To avoid user to lose the content. So we have this fetch content, which takes an entry in a URL and I guess an array of content. And we're going to try to call the content proxy with update entry. And we might get an exception. What does update entry do? Where'd it go? Here? How do I close this? Go away. Okay. Update entry using either fetched or provided content. So it seems like if we're here, I don't know, toggle image refer. If content is empty, then we're going to clean up. Otherwise, I guess we might call this grabby fetch content. Okay. So update entry, the naming is a little bit confusing to me because I would expect there to, the function that fetches content to say that it's going to fetch content. At any rate, so Gravy is going to fetch content. I don't think we've seen Gravy or Grabby. I'm going to guess it's probably meant to be Grabby. So let's go to definition. Fetch content. Abstract import. I think this is the thing that where we just were. So let's maybe click on Grabby or Gravy. Go to definition. Protected. I'm at the definition. Let's try. Looking for Grabby. Oh, I think I meant for this to be a repo. But it seems like it understood what I meant. Okay, we've got a class Grabby site config builder test. Import exception from Grabby. Content extraction relies on Grabby. Okay, Joker / Grabby. In fact, when I searched for Grabby, Sourcegraph wanted to show me that repo, which was kind of cool. Here. Can I just go to the repo to browse it? I guess so. Cool. It's got a nice logo. Why this fork? Full text RSS works great as a standalone application. It's based on PHP readability. But when you need to encapsulate it in your own library, it's a mess. You need this kind of ugly thing. Article request. And then it seems like that's only 3 lines. It's hard to read and understand, and finally there were no tests at all. Okay, so this is some fork. Again, I don't know how to go back up to the root directory. Maybe that? Okay. So here's Grabby. I kind of want to just see their fetcher. Maybe grabby.php. We've got some constructor and some logging. Fetch content. Fetch content from the given URL. So we're going to do some logging stuff, and then we're going to call this do fetch content and some exception stuff. Let's go to this do fetch content. Do fetch content from a URL. I would like more space at the top. I'm not sure how to do that. In fact, I might just take this and open it in GitHub. I guess I can't, can I? I can do this. Not found. Oh, well, I guess I can't do that. All right, so let's look at it here. All right, so do fetch content is going to build a configure from the URL, a config from the URL, I suppose. And if there's no prefetched content, we'll do some stuff. Otherwise, we're going to call this get response for prefetched content. Let's assume that we're not prefetching. And then we just call HTTP client fetch, which I guess is just going to fetch. Essentially curl or wget maybe. Response effective URL, I don't know what that is, but we'll replace %20 which I think is just trying to do URL encoding, but it doesn't seem to be doing full URL encoding. So URL %20. Can I search for this? So %20 is space. Yeah, that's what I thought. And that's what they're replacing. So this is maybe just a subset of URL encoding. And if this URL is allowed, or if this is not allowed, then we throw some error. Otherwise, we get the MIME info from the headers. And we might handle MIME action, which I'm kind of curious about. Handle action related to MIME type detection. This action can be exclude or link to handle a custom event like image, video, PDF, etc. And I'm just curious. So application PDF, for example. So I guess if you add a PDF, it's going to do this thing. It's going to get a PDF parser from somewhere. I don't know where. From, I guess, an import statement. Small PDF parser. Okay, and it's going to parse the content. And then we've got some hack to avoid characters like question mark, or maybe this is a special kind of question mark in a diamond, or maybe it's just not displaying what the character is on my browser. Then we're going to call MB convert encoding. I suppose to UTF-8, strip away unwanted characters that usually come from PDF extraction. And we've got some kind of like magic numbers here. And then we'll call get details. Update the title in case the details are present. So I guess the PDF might have its own title, and that might be better than the title from the URL. And okay, so it seems like the PDF stuff is mainly relying on this PDF parser library with a little bit of cleaning up. That's probably found through essentially trial and error as you try to turn various PDFs into text, and you realize that certain things are that are common mistakes or whatever. Okay, so that's handle MIME action. But I want to go back to the fetcher. Okay, so we're going to handle the MIME action and set the infos. And then we're also going to convert to UTF-8, the body, and maybe also the headers. I guess we're passing both in. And then we might emit a debug message. And then remove empty lines to avoid runaway evaluation of the following regex on badly coded websites. Okay, so it looks like, what is this? This is like a tab. As many tabs, and then like a carriage return, and then a new line, plus /m. I don't know what the /m is doing. And then we're going to just replace all of those. I don't know why. Badly coded websites. Remove empty nodes, except for the following regex. But we're using this regex. So this regex can't be the thing that's going to cause runaway evaluation. Otherwise, we wouldn't be evaluating it to cause it to not evaluate, but badly. So maybe there's more regexes down below. Remove empty nodes, except iframe, td, and th. I guess we'll remove some iframes. In case the string is too long, keep the HTML unclean to avoid empty HTML. And we've got some preg. I don't know what preg is, but some error stuff. And then some debugging. And then more UTF-8 hacks, I guess. Then check site config for a single page URL, fetch it if found. I guess I don't know what it means by a single page URL. And then finally, we're going to call extractor process HTML. And then readability, whatever readability is, get content, etc. Ensure image is absolute. In case no language is found, do some stuff. And then we might have multi-page articles. I don't know how it knows whether it's whether it's multi-page or not. And then we're going to create a new thing with content that has essentially looks like an entry from the other repo. We just got a status, HTML, title, language, date, authors, etc. Okay. So remove empty nodes, except iframe. Just going to try to do this with a regex. It looks like. But I guess you could do that. So it's known that HTML is not a regular language, right? So I'm not sure what's going on with the regexes here. I don't know how you properly parse HTML, but it seems like I guess I would have expected it to use another HTML parsing library, which it might do somewhere. So after we've cleaned it up, remove empty lines, remove empty nodes. What do we do? We log possibly single page. Let's look at single page. Maybe extractor. Look at content extractor. So the content extractor uses patterns specified in site config files and auto detection to extract content from HTML files. Okay. And we can do reset, find host using fingerprints. Process. Smart tidy indicates that if tidy is used and no results are produced, it will try again. Okay. So process is going to do things like get the allowed parsers, get readability. I don't know what readability is. I guess let's look at that in a second. We've got some new DOM XPath stuff. Use XPath to find elements in the given HTML document. Try to get the next page link. Okay, so I guess if you give it a page that has a next page link, site config next page link. Okay, so I guess in the site config, you can tell it that the site consists of a lot of articles that have multiple pages. Okay, and then we've got some XPath stuff, and then we're going to trim. And it seems like, was it readability? Readability might be important. Go to definition. Get out of here. Okay. So return an instance of readability. And readability has pre-filters and post-filters. I guess for cleaning up stuff. Where is readability? We have use readability. I guess it's maybe an external repository. Okay, cool. All right. So I think that's good enough for me to have a sense of what's going on in the main repo. So there's the fetcher, kind of like I suspect that there's a fetcher. It's going to clean some stuff up um, and do things like try to fetch multiple pages. So that's the fetcher logic. And then the PHP kind of database logic seems all very straightforward. We have things like tags and entries and users. And there's also annotations, which I'm sure kind of looks at ranges of text or something and adds metadata to them. I wanted to also look at the Android app, I guess. And I'm probably not going to look too much at this app just because I don't want to be here too long. We've got main, because this is Java. We have to dig in like 20 directories deep before we get anywhere. And in main, we have data events network service. TTS, that's probably text to speech. That's probably the main thing I want. And then UI utils. I'm kind of curious how data works. Maybe event and network and service. And I'll ignore the UI. Oops. What is this? Text to speech. We have generic item, image item, JS, TTS controller, probably JavaScript, text interface, text item, TTS converter, TTS data, TTS fragment, TTS host, and service. So we'll look at all of that, I guess, pretty quickly. Here's data. We've got dial, which I think is some sort of Android database object. We've got a database connection, some utils, a list adapter, which I'm guessing is going to take the database entries and produce a list for the Android UI. We have a queue helper. I'll look at queue helper and storage helper. And maybe database utils. I guess that's all. And then events, we have an action result event. So we get this kind of event style like we saw in the PHP app. Background operation event, background operation finished. So I guess you can listen to these events perhaps. Boot completed, connectivity changed, download file finished, feeds changed event. And so here, like, I'm just really curious what the events are. These are independent files. This could have also been an enum, possibly in other languages. So the file names are giving me a lot of information about how it's implemented under the hood. And so I'm not going to look at a lot of the files. I'm just curious, like, what sort of events are there? And from the events, you can assume that they're wired up the way that you expect them to be wired up. We have an event helper and an event processor. Feeds changed, like finishing for, progress for fetch images, started, finished. Load article replaced. A generic process event. You can sweep deleted articles. Sync queue finished. Sync queue progress. Update articles progress. Finish and start. Okay. Cool. Here's network. We've got, okay, so this is probably, I guess, the client. So we can create a request. We have client credentials. Wallabag connection, Wallabag service. Tasks. What are the tasks? Get credentials. Test API access. Test connection. Okay. And then some exceptions. Like incorrect credentials. Okay. Cool. And then service has things like an action request, an alarm helper. I don't know what an alarm is. A boot receiver. Maybe this is a thing that listens to boot events. A main service. Callable parameterized adapter. Parsable utils. Task service. Looks like a task service. And then we've got workers and tasks. We've got a fair amount of workers. So I guess the workers are going to do things like fetch, download the article as a file. You can download images. Update articles has a worker. Article updater. Base network manager, base worker. Delete article sweeper, etc. Operations worker. Cool. And what about the tasks? You can action request task, add article task, article change task, fetch article generic field, simple task, etc. Update articles task. Okay. Now we're in the TTS stuff. And I'll go through this quickly. I just kind of want to get a feel for what it's doing. So here's JavaScript controller. I guess because probably ultimately we're using like a web view to view the article. So set web view text. Seems like we're probably using web view. And we've got hooks like on start, on end. And on end here is going to call post or on document parse end. What does it do? On text. We give it some text and a top string and bottom string and some string extras. We're going to call web view text on document parse text. Put the stuff we post in. And then on image, we'll do some stuff. What does this have to do with TTS? I don't know. On start. I'm not sure that this is what this is doing in the TTS folder. But maybe we'll see it called somewhere. Okay, here's the text interface. And we can do things like restore from start, store current, I guess like progress, restore current. These are void. Maybe they do something with the database. Set current index, get item, which takes an index and returns a generic item. Next, which returns a Boolean, I guess whether you can go next. Rewind. I guess it's maybe whether the action is successful. Rewind, fast forward, skip to next, skip to previous, get time, and get total duration. Okay. And then text item extends generic item. And has like emphasis, maybe like bold or italics. So, okay. What's going on here? The type, emphasis, final string, type, string, and we can get the type. I don't know what it's actually doing with the emphasis. And we've got a text item, which has text, top, bottom, and extras. I don't know what the top, bottom, and extras things are doing, but maybe we will find out. A TTS converter. Okay. It's comparable. It's comparable, I guess, to other converters. Time per character approximation is 58. Got a context. And car sequence. So convert is going to take a generic item and turn it into a car sequence. And it's going to check if the generic item is a text item or an image item. In which case we're going to get I guess a text or image convert thingy back. Car sequence back. We can calculate approximate duration, which is going to be approximate length times the time per character approximation, which is fixed. I don't know how that relates to speed. Like if you ask it to read it faster, maybe you always get the speed at the 58 words per minute reading speed or something. And then convert. It's going to mainly simplify some stuff. Take the extras, put them in a list. Get the original length. Have some array of offsets. And then iterate over extras. And if it's emphasis, I didn't find any proper way to emphasize in DTS. So just add extra commas. Okay, so we'll add some extra commas essentially to set off the bold maybe or italics. Removes unsupported extra types. Only emphasis is supported. Okay, so we can insert something into the list. I guess given an offset and a string, we can insert it into something and we get a string back. Maybe the string is the string that, I don't know. I just index it at offset. Index int amount. And then we've got approximate length. So it's doing something with strings and characters and adding emphasis. So TTS data, some arbitrary number, not more than 16 bits. Request code marker. Okay. I really don't know what's going on here. There's a lot of structure, but I don't see what's, it's not obvious to me yet what the structure is in service of. So we have activity for result starter. And probably that's a, if I had started at other files, it would be more clear. Maybe let's find TTS fragment, maybe TTS host, TTS service. Let's look at service. Okay, we're importing lots of stuff that looks good, including binder. Or rather, yeah, binder, iBinder. Okay, we're importing Android stuff. So this is going to extend service, text-to-speech service. Needs a text interface to access the text-to-speech. Try to follow recommendations from this video. Media playback the right way. That's cool. All right, we've got some state, which includes created, want to play, whether it's playing with pause, stopped, destroyed, or error. We have an utterance ID to index mapper. And then we've got some speak queue size. And we're going to create utterance IDs, the size of the queue, and we're going to get indexes, the size of the queue. And then we're maybe going to create a hash map essentially. No. Add utterance to index map. We're going to give it utterance ID and item index. And okay, we're just going to add it to the list, I guess. Get indexed by utterance ID. This is just going to, I guess, do linear search over the list and return the corresponding index. And then we've got actions for play, pause, rewind, etc. And then these are always available actions: play, pause, play or pause. So I guess this is like a triangle button that toggles into the vertical equal signs or whatever the pause button looks like. Rewind, forward, previous, next, and stop. Okay, and then we've got stuff for the TTS engine, a speed rate and a pitch rate. Do fix access is not properly synchronized. Okay, so on create, we're going to do some Android-y stuff, it looks like. Audio focus request compat, binder audio focus gain. I guess when we get audio focus, but pause when ducked. So maybe it stops reading if we lose focus. Fake sound, silence. So we're going to play silence, I guess, to avoid maybe some sort of clipping or whatever. Media session stuff. I don't know what this stuff is in Android. I've never really dealt with it. And then we have a broadcast receiver. Noisy receiver. I don't know what that is. And then we're going to call it, get the TTS converter object. And a main thread handler. And if we don't have a TTS engine already, we'll create one. Otherwise, we'll set it to the existing engine essentially. Then we're going to set media session playback state and set foreground and notification. And we've got some on destroy thing, which I guess is going to undo all the setup. And play command, it's going to look at the state. So it's going to do this kind of state machine stuff. We're going to switch on the state. And if we've been created, stop, pause, or want to play, I guess we'll play, right? We'll check some stuff, see if it's true. Request audio focus. And check that we're initialized. If play from start, then we'll say play from start is false, I guess because we already started. And then call restore from start. Otherwise, we'll restore current. And then we'll set the media playback state, set foreground and notification, register receiver, noisy receiver. I guess, yeah, audio becomes noisy, I think is what Android emits when you like unplug your headphones or something. If your model has a headphone plug jack thing. Then we play a fake sound to make media session active. Then we execute speak. And look, we can click on stuff in this GitHub repo. And execute speak is just going to call execute on background thread this.speak. This speak is supposed to be synchronous, so I'm not sure executor is required. Okay. I can't go here. Maybe void speak. Yeah, here we go. I was already in it. So here's the speak function, which is actually going to do this speak stuff. I guess if state is not, if we're not playing, or it's null, or the interface is null, we're going to log some stuff in return. Otherwise, we're going to call it essentially text to speech, or sorry, TTS speak, with the given current index in the queue. And then we're going to iterate over the queue size, starting at 1. And speaking. But why do we do this? Why don't we start at 0 and do it here? Oh, I guess we're going to call queue flush as opposed to queue add. So whatever's in the queue, we're going to kick it out. And then for the rest of the speech stuff, we're going to add stuff. I guess this leaves there's some thread safety thing here where once I've spoken this one, what if I have another app or something that adds to the queue? I don't know if you can somehow lock the text to speech system so that the queue is just your stuff. I have no idea. Then we've got this function in queue if more utterance matches. And then it's going to take an utterance ID. And if the value of the utterance ID is not equal to the done utterance ID, so I guess the done utterance ID is uttered when we're done somehow, then we're going to return. Otherwise, we're going to somehow speak more stuff. I guess, but where do we get the index? Get current index? So where's done utterance ID? We got an onspeak done listener, onspeak done. So for onspeak done, onspeak done, I guess when the speak system tells us it's done, we're going to see if the state is playing and the value of utterance ID is equal to the done utterance ID. In which case, we're going to call next on the text interface. And if that returns true, then we're going to enqueue more stuff if the utterance matches the done ID. And then we're going to set the media session playback state. And let's see if we can find. I guess that's good for me for all. I'm going to ignore all these other files, but maybe in source graph, so I can spell it correctly. Let's see if we can find this utterance ID, or maybe I can just try a search on GitHub. Will GitHub let me do this? It's just a value. So I guess maybe the done utterance ID is just essentially what the TTS system passed us back. I thought maybe it was like a flag that we're looking for specifically, but I guess it's just whatever was finished, whatever was the ID when we finished. Okay, that seems like the case. All right, cool. So that was Wallabag. Seems pretty good. I'll work on setting up an installation at home, and tomorrow I'm going to do a fan request. Friday, fan roulette. We'll pick a random repo to look at and poke around. And that's all for me. Thanks for watching.